10:27 on News Talk 550 KTSA. Gang of Four is on the radio. Steven Stoli is here, Jay Tope, and Elaine Wolff. And you can hang with the gang at 599-5555. All right, so the Senate did not pass. The House passed CCB. We talked about the BBA. I feel like we're back in the 1930s, you know. We need the CCC and the PWA. Okay, so let me ask you some basics here. Let me see where your heads are at on this. One of the points of disagreement or dispute is people who say we cannot cut defense spending versus people who say we must cut defense spending. What is anything off the table, in your opinion, if we're talking about cutting the federal budget in a meaningful way, not just temporarily? Is anything off the table?
I think there are some things that are off the table. I think Social Security benefits are off the table. I mean, you can't cut Social Security benefits. There's too many people that's their life. I don't think you can cut when it comes to military spending.
Can I just interrupt here? When you say you can't cut it, you mean you can't cut the people receiving the benefits right now, but can you put means testing in for the future, or can you put an escape option in for the future where people can opt out?
Especially an opt out, because that, people are choosing.
So even that's on the table, just not for current recipients.
No, definitely not for current recipients. Another thing is the soldiers that we've got right now, the airmen, the seamen. We can't be cutting they're making very little for the sacrifices they're making at the time.
But can you cut the defense budget? Is the defense budget off the table?
No,
of course not.
I don't think it's off the table. There are, trust me, I have someone very close to me that works in the Defense Department. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of cutting that they can do without sacrificing, our strength.
So nothing is off the table except people receiving current benefits. We're not going to break the promise to somebody right now who's counting on that next check, right, Elaine?
Yeah, and along those same lines, I mean, going back to the question we were talking about just before we took the last break, I'm partial to the argument that right now, when we are still very much in an economic recovery, when you still have what is left of the middle class suffering terribly, the working poor suffering very, very much, I don't know that right now is the time to say we got to balance this budget. I think right now is the time to say, how do we really get this economy back on track? And then when you've actually got money coming back in again, that's when you start doing things like, all right, let's balance the budget, let's get this stuff taken care of. If you are barely making it as a family, you don't go, let's go ahead and retire the car payment right now.
Well, is there a connection, Stephen, between balancing the budget and offering some encouragement to the business community? This week, Steve Wynn, the Vegas financier, said that's the problem. Yeah. The inability of Washington to deal with this is why business is sitting on its hands.
I totally agree. If I still had the Playhouse and my entertainment company, stuff like that, I wouldn't be hiring anybody right now. I'd be sitting and waiting to see what they were doing with the taxes, the payroll taxes, all that kind of stuff, because they're the ones that can hurt you economically. More so than losing customers.
But they don't have to say to you, the only thing we can do is either balance this budget or increase your taxes. Those aren't the options at all.
I want to know what they're going to do so I can make my plans accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So, this idea is floating around out there. We talked a little bit about it week before last. This idea is floating around out there that in the future, going forward, this mechanism of Congress getting to raise its own debt ceiling has got to change. One proposal, which I like, but obviously there are many, would be to require the state legislatures, a majority of the state legislatures, to raise the debt ceiling. Because clearly, I can't go into a bank and raise my credit line. But these people who spend this money, who come up with ways to spend it, and every time they have a chance to, they invent a new way to, both parties, they're the ones who are raising the debt ceiling. I mean, shouldn't somebody else be making that decision? Some responsible adults be making that decision?
Right, basically what you're saying is that the system's broken and we can't trust these people to do the job that we gave them.
Well, it's a basic conflict of interest.
I think if you bring the state legislatures in or someone else, they still have a financial interest in that debt ceiling being raised ultimately. So all you do is make the process more complicated and longer and even more political than it already is.
I'm thinking it should be a little more complicated in the sense that it should take more time. I don't like the idea that they could decide today, oh, we've been at this long enough, boom, and up it goes. I don't like that. Mm-hmm. That's all phony money.
Do you like the idea of suddenly, having the FAA folks furloughed on Friday?
No.
At the end of the day on Friday? Okay.
Well, it depends which ones.
I was thinking the ones who make sure that the planes land where they're supposed to land.
Yeah, I don't want them to. No, I want them to
Super
stay.
partial to,
I want
yeah.
them to stay. Do you think that you listen to the rhetoric on both sides of this? Armageddon. Chris Matthews last week said not raising the debt ceiling. This is a pretty smart guy, right, Chris Matthews? Worst thing that would ever happen to the United States of America. And on the other side, guilty of it too. Do you get the feeling that with that kind of language, you almost cannot trust what they're saying? Because it's when politicians start telling you it's Armageddon that they're lying the most. I mean, that's when they're really covering up. In fact, the day Armageddon comes, I predict no politician will be calling it Armageddon, right? I mean, that's the truth. So if they're calling it Armageddon, it's probably very much not the case.
It's you know, it's scary just you know, when you see what's happened to other countries that have defaulted, and what it's done to you know, not just their country but to world markets around. And you know, I mean, the United States, you know, for all that people have, you know, trashed our name around the world, we're still looked up to as a financial power. And I think the one thing that scares me, I don't think it's Armageddon, but you know, the fact that, you know, our credit rating could be lowered, that could have a huge effect, and maybe not as much so here as around the world. And I definitely don't think it's an Armageddon scenario, but it's, you know, we're really treading in uncharted waters. And so I mean, but I think you know, anytime they try to make a crisis, you know, out of something that you know, it's a mess. And I really think that I hope we don't get to that point, but I really think, you know, personally, I don't think we should raise the debt ceiling, because I think that we can do some things before we get to that point.
So let's say that they raise the debt ceiling, they reform the tax code. This is what they say they want to do, right? We want to close loopholes, we want to reform the tax code, we want to return to Reagan-era level tax rates, tax increase, but you're saying, look, these were the rates under Reagan. We realize more revenue as a result of the increased economic activity that, Stephen, you say will result when people see that there's been a solution, that there's something in place. What happens with, where does that money go? Because I don't think it goes to paying down our debt.
No.
I mean, I think if we find a way, and I'm always fascinated by the fact that people who call my show are racking their brains trying to figure out how to get the government more money. I mean, it's a fascinating thing. We feel like we've got to find a way for them to have more money. We're all in need of more money, but somehow we think, no, the solution is we've got to find a way, and we somehow trust that if we found them more money, it would be applied to this groaning, burgeoning debt that we're crushed under. But I don't believe it would be. I think it's like giving a bottle to an alcoholic. He's not gonna invite people over, right? He's gonna sit in the corner with it.
I don't think the answer is that you just then take the money and stick it into that big black hole. I think the answer is that you then use the space that you buy and the political capital that you buy to then make a more balanced budget and to make better decisions, to cut out a bunch of the fat, to cut out a bunch of the pet programs that don't make sense, that don't actually make us a better country in which to live and work. So that's what we do with it. It's not that you just take, you know, A and put it at B. So
Where, okay, that sounds very reasonable. Where in the recent record of these two parties, Elaine, is there any indication that either of them or both of them would do that?
I realize that we are talking in the context of a bunch of people that are like wildly dysfunctional. I don't know what to do about that. I do think that you have got folks right now on both sides, but particularly I'm going to talk about the Tea Party folks for just a minute, who really are being absolutely, they're pretending to stand on principle, but they're just being incredibly irresponsible about it, because that level of uncertainty and this notion that whatever, we can just run this whole thing off the cliff and somehow that's going to make things better. Somehow that's going to cause us to right ourselves and do it right and do it correctly is completely wrong.
See, I don't hear people in the Tea Party wanting to run us off the cliff. In fact, they were the first ones to point out we were heading for the cliff. I see them saying we don't want to buy time for irresponsible people to continue irresponsible policies. You even admit we will be right back here having this same discussion, perhaps even literally this same group of people in X number of months.
Mm-hmm. Let me so you do believe that the debt is an incredible problem, right? That it's what
I agree with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs that it's up there with any threat that we've ever faced from the Soviet Union or terrorism.
But you also have
Absolutely.
plenty of very, very smart economists saying, hey, that's not our biggest problem at all. And as a matter of fact, if we spend too much time thinking about that instead of how do we smartly stimulate the economy, we should be thinking about spending money, not about cutting.
Well, we've
money
had
right
2
now.
years to try to
I think-
stimulate the economy, though. I mean, we've tried that.
But we did it very poorly. We
Yes,
did it partially,
yes,
poorly
right.
and partially, which doesn't mean you just stop.
Partially.
I mean, it's not like
No,
you
no,
said,
no,
it's not like you go, okay, so we went in, and we took out this one piece of cancer. We
Right.
didn't take out the whole thing, and shoot, that didn't work. So I guess we aren't going to try that again.
Well, they had a
That's
commission, right?
sense.
He had a bipartisan commission about the debt.
Oh,
What happened
yes.
to those guys?
Oh, yes.
What happened to all those recommendations, you know?
Yes.
Because I would rather have a commission that just
They
went
should be
there
on a
and-
milk carton. Those people, thanks for nothing.
Yeah, well, and the thing is I'd rather have a commission that just said, okay, we're going to just go and discover government waste.
See, this is
That's
what
all
I'm
we're gonna
saying.
do.
This
Yes,
is
but
what
I
I'm
think
saying.
And
that's
that's-
the problem
and-
is that there is
yeah.
a ton of government waste. But can we agree on what the government waste is? When we're honestly having I mean,
But couldn't that report have been the basis for it? That was a bipartisan commission. Everybody respects Bowles and Simpson, right? They're serious guys, right?
right. But if the game wasn't right now, that we have to completely undo what was a popularly elected Democratic president. I mean, that's been the Republicans' game from the day that Obama got into office. And I think you can agree or disagree about the specific policy issues that they battled over, but the whole deal has been he's going to have an unsuccessful first term, and then we're going to get him out of there. And so they have not been responsible in any of the ways that they've addressed what are totally reasonable
but Elaine, it was
disagreements. You
Obama
can
himself
totally disagree.
that. Wait a minute, hold on though. Obama's the one that dissed the Bowles-Simpson report. Obama's the one that rejected that report. He created that commission. That wasn't foisted on him. It was a majority Democratic commission, so it wasn't like a stacked deck. And he's the one in December of last year
I
that
will-
decided to blow that off. That wasn't the
I
Republicans
will agree
doing
he has
that.
made very bad decisions in the context of him caring entirely about
I mean,
his
sure, the
re-election next
Republicans
time
are
around.
out to
Yeah.
get him.
Yeah.
We all know
Sure.
that. We all agree with that. But I mean, if that wasn't good enough, what will ever be good enough?
Yeah.
Will
I
the
think
next
we've-
commission be the one we listen to?
I think we've bred a big pile of very dysfunctional politicians. I don't know what's happened. I'm sure it was like this, but we didn't maybe read about it as much when LBJ was controlling the Senate or being president. You can listen to his tapes and find out that it was. But I think they've just kind of gone off. I don't trust anybody anymore. I listened to John Cornyn yesterday on the radio. He didn't tell me anything I don't already know. I'm going, tell me something different. Get off this soapbox and do something.
That's what's
this is-
worrisome too, because you listen to even the people that are gearing up to run for president, or a guy like Joaquin Castro, who I like, nice guy, going to run for Congress. There's nothing new there. There's
Yeah,
nothing.
there is
There's
nothing.
nothing new. Let us go. We want to go there and continue working on this.
Oh, they
That's
want to
what
get
we're
their
here.
pension.
Well, I think
I'd like to
that
work
everybody
for one
wants to get some-
term and get a pension like that.
Well, then isn't
That'd
that?
be nice.
But then isn't that the moment when you have these grayer heads that are no longer in the game? They come, they dispense the bitter medicine. You can take it, blame them, but actually do what they're recommending. I mean, that was the moment.
But people are still going to blame you back in your district. I mean, that's the problem, right? At the end of the
So
day.
you have to
Because
be
we talked about this
willing-
Before, I mean, I don't think that it's not that anybody's really for cutting spending. They're for cutting particular
Cutting
types of
other people's
spending
spending.
that other people's spending that they think will play well back at home for them.
Well, it goes back to what I said a while back, which is until we have a generation of people who are willing to go do this but have no interest in a career, they want to be like the fixers who go, serve,
Originally.
and get out. Unless we were to get that, I don't see this being
I
fixed.
think they should meet every 2 years, just like the state does. That way they
Oh
have to go
yes,
back
because our
and work.
legislature it works so well.
Yeah, it's 10.
At
It's
least it gets them out of
10:41.
government for a while.
It's 10:41 on News Talk 550 KTSA. Let's get an update right now from ABC News on today's terror attack in Oslo, Norway.